There is a woman on a hill, and she has not moved in months. The sun has baked her skin until it cracks at the corners of her mouth. Her hair, once dark and oiled and pulled back in the careful way that women of the royal household learn to wear it, now hangs in matted ropes against her neck. Her hands are raw, her nails are broken down to the quick. She sits on a flat piece of sackcloth spread across bare rock, and the roughness of the fabric has worn through to her skin in places, but she does not shift. She does not adjust. She simply sits, and watches. Above her, 7 bodies hang from wooden stakes driven into the ridge of the hill. The smell is something that stopped being a smell weeks ago and became a presence, a weight in the air, a thing that lives in her clothes and her hair and the back of her throat. Flies move in slow black clouds. Vultures circle in wide, patient arcs against a sky so white with heat that it looks like the inside of a kiln. Every few minutes, one of them drops lower, testing, and the woman rises to her feet and swings a long branch and screams something that is no longer a word, just a sound, a ragged force of air pushed through a throat that has forgotten what rest feels like. The bird pulls up, retreats, waits. She sits back down. She's not a queen. She's not a prophet. She has no army, no title, no authority recognized by any court in Israel. She is a concubine, a woman whose position in the world has always depended on someone else's decision to keep her. And the 2 bodies closest to where she sits, the 2 she looks at most, are her sons. Their names are Armoni and Mephibosheth, and they did nothing. This is the story of Rizpah. And by the time it is over, you will understand how one woman's refusal to leave a hill shamed a king into action, broke a 3-year famine, healed a wound that had been bleeding in Israel for a generation, and proved something that the powerful have always been slow to learn: that the most dangerous force in the world is not an army. It is a mother who has decided that she will not let you look away. If you have ever fought for someone who could not fight for themselves, if you have ever been the only one standing when everyone else walked away, if you have ever been told that your grief was inconvenient and your protest was pointless, this story was written for you. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because this channel exists for people who need to hear what nobody else is saying. Now, before the hill, before the stakes, before the smell of death and the sound of wings. Let us go back to the beginning, to the time when Rizpah's world was still intact, and her sons were still alive, and the sky still held rain. She lives in Gibeah, the old capital, the place where Saul once ruled, before everything fell apart at Gilboa, before the Philistine arrows found him on the mountain, and the crown passed to a shepherd from Bethlehem. The palace is quieter now. The halls that once held the noise of a king's household, the clatter of armor, the low hum of advisors arguing through the evening, now hold mostly echoes. Rizpah moves through them like someone who knows she is a guest in a house that no longer has an owner. She is Saul's concubine, not his wife, not his widow in the way that carries legal weight. She is a woman who belonged to a dead king, and in the politics of ancient Israel, that makes her something between a relic and a liability. But she has her sons. Armoni, the older one, quiet and steady, the kind of young man who fixes things without being asked, who checks the grain stores and mends the gate hinges and never raises his voice. And Mephibosheth, the younger, quicker to laugh, quicker to anger, the one who still sometimes looks at her with that expression she remembers from when he was small, the one that says, "Am I doing this right?" They are not princes. They hold no land, command no soldiers, sit in no council. They are the sons of a concubine of a dead king, which means they are close enough to power to be remembered, but far enough from it to be forgotten. And Rizpah has made peace with that. Peace with the small rooms. Peace with the quiet meals. Peace with the way the servants of David's court look past her as if she is part of the furniture. She does not need the world to see her. She needs her sons to be safe. That is enough. That has always been enough. But something is wrong in the land, and it has been wrong for a long time. The rains did not come last year, or the year before, or the year before that. 3 years now, the sky has been a closed door. The barley withers before it heads. The wheat dies in the field. Wells that have held water since the time of the judges are pulling up mud, and then dust, and then nothing. Livestock thin to bone. Children develop the swollen bellies that every mother in the ancient world recognizes and dreads. The marketplaces grow quieter each month. Prices rise. Tempers rise faster. And the question that everyone whispers, but no one says aloud, finally makes its way to the throne room in Jerusalem. Why has God turned his face away? David, the king, the man after God's own heart, does what kings do when the land is dying. He seeks the Lord. And the answer that comes back is not comfort. It is not instruction. It is a name. Saul. The famine is because of Saul, because of blood. Because years ago, in a fit of misguided zeal, Saul attacked the Gibeonites, a people with whom Israel had sworn a sacred covenant of peace generations earlier, back in the days of Joshua. Saul killed some of them, tried to wipe them out, and the oath that Joshua had sworn, the covenant sealed before God, was shattered by a king who thought his power meant he could rewrite the promises of the dead. God remembered. The Gibeonites remembered, and now the land itself is remembering, refusing to yield its fruit until the debt is paid. David sends messengers to the Gibeonites. The question is simple and terrible. What will make this right? What atonement will heal the breach between your people and ours? The messengers ride out from Jerusalem in the morning and return before nightfall, and the answer they carry is the kind of answer that makes a king sit very still for a very long time. The Gibeonites do not want silver. They do not want land. They want 7 of Saul's male descendants, delivered to them, to be killed and their bodies exposed on a hill before the Lord at Gibeah, Saul's own city, where the crime began. 7 sons for a broken oath. And David, the king who wrote psalms about mercy, the king who spared Saul's life twice in the wilderness, the king who promised Jonathan that he would show kindness to his house forever, David says yes. He does not argue. He does not negotiate. He does not seek another way. The land is dying, and the land needs rain, and the Gibeonites have named their price, and 7 men from Saul's bloodline are about to become the cost of peace. What happens next will haunt a hillside for months, and the woman at the center of it does not know yet that the messengers are already on their way to her door. The knock comes in the morning. Rizpah is grinding grain when she hears it. Not the soft knock of a neighbor borrowing flour, not the familiar rhythm of a friend's hand. This is the knock of authority. 2 strikes, evenly spaced, the kind of sound that carries weight before the door even opens. She sets the grinding stone down, wipes her hands on her tunic, crosses the room, and when she opens the door, she sees two men she does not recognize, dressed in the linen of David's court, standing straight-backed in the early light, with the careful blankness on their faces that officials wear when they are about to deliver something they do not want to say. They ask for Armoni and Mephibosheth by name. Rizpah's hand tightens on the door frame. She does not step aside. She asks why. And the men explain, because that is what they have been instructed to do in calm and measured language, the way you explain a legal proceeding. The famine, the inquiry before the Lord, the covenant that Saul broke, the Gibeonites' demand, the king's decision. 7 descendants of Saul are to be handed over. Her sons have been selected. The words reach her ears in sequence, and each one distinct, each one making grammatical sense, and yet together they form a sentence that her mind refuses to assemble. She hears handed over, and Gibeonites, and before the Lord, and the phrase that no official says plainly, but that hangs in the silence between their careful words. They are going to die. She asks them to repeat it, not because she didn't hear, because the first time the words went through her like wind through an open window, touching nothing, leaving nothing. The second time they land, and the weight of them buckles something behind her ribs that will never straighten again. Armoni appears behind her. He has heard. His face is the color of ash, and his jaw is set in that way she knows, the way he holds himself when he is afraid, but doesn't want her to see it. Mephibosheth is further back in the house. Even she can hear him standing up, the scrape of a bench, the pad of bare feet on stone, and she wants to turn around and push them both into the back room and bar the door and stand in front of it with her body until the men in linen give up and leave. But she knows. She knows the way power works. She has lived inside its house long enough to understand that there are doors you cannot bar and decisions you cannot reverse, and moments when your love is enormous and your authority is nothing. David has spoken. The king's word is the king's word, and her sons are not princes. They are the expendable sons of a dead king's concubine, and in the mathematics of national atonement, they are the cheapest blood available. Someone in the court chose them. She will never know who. She will never know if David paused when their names were read, if he asked whether there were others, if he thought of her at all. What she knows is that the men at her door are not asking. They are informing. A neighbor watches from across the narrow street. An older woman who has known Rizpah for years, who brought her bread when Saul died, who helped her patch the roof after a storm 2 winters ago. Rizpah looks at her, and the woman looks away, not from cruelty, from helplessness, from the terrible instinct to distance yourself from someone whose suffering might be contagious. Later, this same neighbor will tell another woman in the marketplace, what could she do? He is the king. You accept it. You grieve. You move on. And she will believe she is being practical, even kind. She will not understand that some things are not meant to be accepted. A court official, one of the men who helped arrange the agreement with the Gibeonites, will say it more plainly when the story is discussed in the halls of Jerusalem. Saul broke the covenant. The land suffers. Someone must pay. It is not cruelty. It is justice. He will say this while eating bread made from grain that grew in soil, watered by the blood of 2 young men whose only crime was their father's name. He will not taste the irony. He will not even taste the bread. He will simply move on to the next item of state business, because that is what officials do. Maybe you know what this feels like, not the specifics, not the ancient hill and the linen-robed messengers, but the architecture of it. The moment when a system, an institution, a process that is bigger than you makes a decision about someone you love, and you are standing right there, and no one asks your opinion, and no one pauses to see if you are breathing. Picture standing in that room, hearing those words, and knowing there is nothing you can do. The hospital hallway where the doctor speaks in a tone that is gentle and final. The courtroom where the ruling comes down, and your hands grip the bench in front of you so hard that your fingers ache for days afterward. The phone call at 2 a.m. that rearranges every molecule of your future in a single sentence. You were there. You were present. And your presence changed nothing. That is where Rizpah stands, in a doorway, with her sons behind her, and the machinery of kings grinding forward without pause. They take them in the morning. Both of them. Along with 5 others, the 5 sons of Merab, Saul's daughter, who were given to Adriel of Meholah. 7 men in total. 7 lives measured out like currency and spent on a debt they did not incur. The walk to the hill is not long. Gibeah is not a large city. But every step of that walk is a universe. Every second a continent. And Rizpah walks behind her sons because no one has told her she cannot. And she will not let them walk to that hill without their mother's eyes on their backs. She watches Armoni's shoulders, the way he holds them square, the way he does not turn around, because he knows that if he sees her face, he will break, and he has decided that the last thing his mother will see is his composure, his steadiness, the quiet dignity she taught him. Mephibosheth is less controlled. He stumbles once on the uneven path and catches himself, and his breathing is audible, ragged, the kind of breathing that comes when the body understands what the mind is still refusing. He looks back once, just once, and the expression on his face is the one she remembers from childhood, the one that says, "Am I doing this right?" And she cannot answer him. She cannot answer him because her throat has closed and her vision has blurred, and the only thing keeping her upright is the momentum of her own feet. The hill is east of the city. It rises like a bare shoulder from the surrounding terrain, rocky, sparse, exposed to the full weight of the sun. The Gibeonites are waiting. They are not monsters. They are a people who were nearly annihilated by a king who broke a sacred oath, and they have waited years for this reckoning, and their faces hold the grim satisfaction of a debt finally being collected. They do not look at Rizpah. She is irrelevant to this transaction. Samuel chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. The king took the 2 sons of Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, Armoni, and Mephibosheth, whom she had borne to Saul, together with the 5 sons of Merab, daughter of Saul, whom she had borne to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Maholathite. He handed them over to the Gibeonites, who killed them and exposed their bodies on a hill before the Lord. All 7 of them fell together. They were put to death in the first days of the harvest, at the beginning of the barley harvest. Let those words settle. All 7 of them fell together. 1 sentence, 1 line in the historical record, 7 lives compressed into 9 words. And behind those 9 words, 7 mothers' worth of memories, 7 childhoods, 7 first steps, 7 first words, 7 faces that someone once cupped between their hands and kissed on the forehead before sleep. All 7 of them fell together. The Bible does not describe how. It does not describe the sound. It does not describe what Rizpah's body did when it happened, whether she collapsed or screamed or stood perfectly still like a woman turned to stone. The text moves on. The text always moves on, but Rizpah does not. The bodies are left on the hill. That is the point. That is the terms of the agreement. Exposed before the Lord. No burial. No tomb. No stone rolled over a cave entrance. No spices wrapped in linen. No final dignity. The bodies will hang, and the sun will do what the sun does, and the birds will come, and the animals will come, and eventually there will be nothing left to prove these men ever existed. That is what the world has decided. That is what the king has sanctioned. That is what justice looks like when you are powerless and your sons are currency. The crowd disperses. The Gibeonites descend the hill. The officials return to Jerusalem to report that the matter is concluded. By evening, the hill is empty of the living, except for Rizpah. She is still there, sitting on the bare rock beside the stakes, her knees drawn to her chest, her eyes fixed on something that is past the horizon, past the landscape, past anything the living can see. The sun drops behind the western ridge, and the temperature falls, and the first stars appear, and the sounds of Gibeah grow distant, muffled, irrelevant. Crickets begin their steady pulse in the dry grass. A dog barks somewhere in the city below, a single sharp report that fades into nothing. The wind moves across the hilltop in slow waves, carrying dust and the scent of dried barley stalks and something else now, something that will grow stronger with each passing day. She is alone. Utterly, completely alone. And the darkness is not a metaphor. It is a physical thing, pressing against her from every direction, and the only light is a thin scythe of moon that barely illuminates her own hands in front of her. She speaks, not to the dead, not to the city below, not to anyone who would hear and answer. She speaks to God, and what comes out of her mouth is not a psalm, it is not a hymn. It is the raw, unstructured language of a woman who has been gutted. Why them? The words are barely audible, scraped from somewhere below her throat. They did nothing. Their hands were clean. Armoni never held a sword against the Gibeonites. Mephibosheth never broke a covenant. They were boys. They were my boys. And you let a king trade them like livestock for rain. The silence that follows is total. No voice from heaven. No warmth in the chest. No settling peace. Just the wind, and the crickets, and the sound of her own breathing. And above her, the shapes of the dead against the stars. This is the lowest place a human being can reach. Not the absence of God, the silence of God. The feeling that you have been heard, and that the answer is nothing. That you are kneeling on a rock in the dark, and the universe is vast and indifferent, and your sons are dead for someone else's sin, and the God who could have stopped it simply did not. But something happens in that silence, not revelation, not comfort. Something smaller and fiercer. A decision. The kind that doesn't come from the mind, but from the marrow, from the place in the bones where love is stored so deep that even despair cannot reach it. Rizpah stands up. She walks to the edge of the hill where the scrub brush grows thick, and she gathers an armful of branches. She comes back. She unfolds the sackcloth she has brought, the rough mourning fabric, and she spreads it on the rock beneath the stakes. She sits down on it. She lays the branches beside her. She's not leaving. She does not know how long she will stay. She does not know what it will cost her. She does not know that the vigil she is beginning tonight will last for months, that it will wreck her body and hollow her face and become the single most defiant act of love recorded in the entire Old Testament. She knows only this: they will not take the burial. They have taken the lives. They will not take the rest. And she will sit on this hill, and she will fight off every vulture and every jackal and every creeping thing that comes for her sons' bodies. And she will do it alone. And she will do it until someone with the power to act is forced to look at what they have done. The first sound comes an hour after midnight, a rustling in the brush below the ridge, low, cautious, predatory, eyes reflecting the faint moonlight. Rizpah grips her branch and rises to her feet. The vigil begins. The first week is endurance. The second week is war. By the third week, it is something else entirely. Something that does not have a name in any language Rizpah knows. Only a shape. Only a rhythm that her body learns the way a heartbeat learns its own pattern. She wakes before dawn. She has learned to sleep in fragments, 20 minutes here, an hour there, her back against the rock and her hand wrapped around the branch so that even in the thin membrane of unconsciousness, her fingers do not release. The birds come with the light. They are patient. They are always patient. Vultures do not rush. They ride the thermals in wide, unhurried loops, tilting their wings to catch the updrafts, their shadows sliding across the hilltop like dark hands reaching and withdrawing. They have learned that the woman is there. They have not learned to give up. Each morning they test her. Each morning she stands and swings and shouts until her voice cracks and the branch whistles through the air and they pull up, banking hard, retreating to the higher currents where they resume their circles. The crows are bolder, smaller, quicker, less afraid of noise. They come in groups of 3 and 4, landing on the rocks just beyond arm's reach, tilting their heads with that sharp, mechanical curiosity that makes them look like they are calculating something. She throws stones at them. She has become accurate. The sound of a stone striking rock near a crow's feet produces a brief explosion of black wings and a harsh, chattering protest, and then silence, and then they return. They always return. By day, the heat is a living thing. The sun climbs the sky like it is angry with the earth, and by midday, the rock beneath the sackcloth is so hot she can feel it through the fabric. A steady, deep warmth that radiates upward into her legs and back and makes the air above the hilltop shimmer and bend. She wraps a strip of cloth around her head. She rations the water in the skin beside her. Small sips, never enough. Just enough to keep her throat open and her eyes focused. Her lips split. The cracks in the corners of her mouth deepen and bleed and dry and bleed again. She does not touch them. She has stopped noticing. The nights are worse. The birds leave with the light, but the darkness brings a different kind of predator. She hears them before she sees them. The soft pad of feet in the brush below the ridge. The low whine, barely audible, that wild dogs make when they have caught a scent. Then the eyes. Always the eyes first, appearing in pairs at the edge of the firelight, reflecting the small blaze she has learned to keep burning through the night with dried brush and whatever scrub wood she can gather in the last hour of daylight. The jackals are cautious but persistent. They circle. They probe. They test the perimeter of her firelight the way water tests a wall, looking for the crack, the gap, the moment of inattention. She does not give them one. She feeds the fire. She stands and swings the branch, and the burning end of it cuts an arc through the darkness, scattering sparks, and the animals retreat, eyes winking out like snuffed candles. But they do not leave. They settle just beyond the light, and she can hear them breathing, and she knows that if the fire dies, they will come. So the fire does not die, not once, not in all the weeks that follow. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verse 10. Rizpah, daughter of Aiah, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on a rock, from the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens on the bodies. She did not let the birds touch them by day or the wild animals by night. Read that again. From the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens. The barley harvest begins in late April or early May. The early rains in Israel typically arrive in October or November. That is 5 to 6 months, 150 days, perhaps more. One woman, one hill, one piece of sackcloth, and the relentless, grinding daily war against everything that comes to devour what she is protecting. The text gives it one verse for half a year of sleepless nights and scorching days and the slow, merciless deterioration of a human body, pushed past every reasonable limit. One verse for the most extraordinary act of defiance in the Old Testament. The Bible does this sometimes. It compresses an ocean into a cup and trusts you to taste the salt. The weeks pass, and the world changes around her while she remains fixed. The barley is cut in the fields below. The wheat follows. The summer deepens, and the hills turn from green to gold to brown. Shepherds move their flocks to different pastures. Merchants travel the road that passes within sight of the hill, and some of them glance up and see the figure sitting among the stakes, and they look away quickly, the way people look away from things that disturb the story. They tell themselves about how the world works, a woman guarding the dead. It does not fit into any category they understand, so they file it under madness and move on. But not everyone looks away. A woman from Gibeah begins leaving a water skin at the base of the hill each morning. She never climbs up. She never speaks. She simply places the skin on a flat rock near the path and retreats. Rizpah finds it when the sun is high, and the thirst is a living creature in her throat, and she drinks, and she doesn't know the woman's name, and the woman does not wait to be thanked. Others leave bread, a handful of dried figs, a folded cloth, small offerings placed at the foot of a hill that has become something none of them expected. Not a place of death, a place of witness. Maybe you know what a vigil feels like. Not this one. Not the ancient version with the sackcloth and the vultures, but the modern architecture of it, the staying, the showing up to the same room, the same bedside, the same situation that has not changed and shows no sign of changing, and choosing to be there again when everything in your body says leave. You are the one who sits in the hospital chair until the vinyl pattern is imprinted on the back of your legs. You are the one who keeps calling, even though they do not answer. You are the one who prays for someone who does not want prayer, who drives to the same house every Tuesday, who opens the same conversation with the same person who is not yet ready to hear it. And the world, the busy, efficient, practical world, looks at you the way those merchants looked at Rizpah, with a quick, uncomfortable glance and a muttered explanation that files your love under foolishness. Think about what it means to stay when everyone else has left. Think about the kind of love that does not calculate its return. That is Rizpah, and she is still on the hill. There is a night, deep in the vigil, when something shifts. It is not sudden. It is not a voice or a vision or a crack of thunder or a shaft of light breaking through clouds. It is quieter than that. It comes the way dawn comes, not all at once, but as a slow, almost imperceptible brightening at the edge of something that has been dark for a very long time. She is sitting with her back against the rock, and the fire is low, and the jackals have not come tonight, and the sky is heavy with stars that look close enough to touch. And she is talking to God again. Not the way she talked that first night. Not with the raw, bleeding accusation of a mother freshly destroyed. That voice burned itself out weeks ago. The voice she has now is lower, quieter, emptied of performance, says graped down to something that is almost indistinguishable from breathing. I cannot bring them back, she says, and the words hang in the air like smoke. I know that. I have known that since the first day. I am not here because I think you will undo what was done. She pauses. Somewhere far below, a nightbird calls, a single note, clean and lonely. I am here because the world decided that my sons were worthless, that their bodies could be left for the birds, like they were nothing, like they were refuse. And I cannot make the world take that back. I cannot make the king take that back. But I can sit on this rock, and I can keep the vultures away. And I can make sure that every person who walks past this hill knows that someone thought they mattered. She pulls the sackcloth tighter around her shoulders. The fabric is so worn it barely holds together. If no one else will say they had dignity, I will say it. With my body, with my time, with whatever I have left. I will say it until someone listens, or until I die on this rock. Either way, I will have said it. And there, in that sentence, spoken to the stars and the silence, and the God who still has not answered with a single audible word, Rizpah discovers something that will outlive her by 3,000 years. She discovers that grief, when it refuses to look away, becomes testimony. That staying, when everyone expects you to leave, becomes a sermon louder than any spoken from a pulpit. That a mother who cannot save her sons can still fight for the only thing left. The insistence that they were real, that they were loved, that their deaths were not acceptable, that someone notice, that someone will not move on. She does not know it, but God is watching the hill, not with the detachment of a cosmic observer, but with the attention of a father who counts. Psalm 56, verse 8. You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle. Are they not in your book? Let those words settle. Every night she fought off an animal, he was counting. Every stone she threw at a crow, every scream she hurled at a circling vulture, every hour she refused to sleep because something might come in the darkness, every tear that fell onto that sackcloth and dried in the sun and was replaced by another, and all of it was being recorded. Not by a scribe in a palace, by the God of the universe, who keeps a book for tears and a bottle for grief, and who does not look away from the hills where mothers sit alone with the dead. If you are holding a vigil right now, if you are the one who has refused to walk away from something the world has written off, if your body is tired and your faith is thin, and you wonder whether anyone, anywhere, even God, sees what you are doing in the dark, if you are the one who shows up and shows up and shows up to a situation that has not changed and may never change, and you keep showing up anyway because something in you will not let you quit. Your vigil is not invisible. Your tears have a bottle. Your tossings have a number. Every single night on your hill has been recorded. If you are holding a vigil right now, if you are the one who has refused to walk away, type "I'm still on the hill" in the comments. Now, months have passed. The summer has burned itself out. The air is shifting, growing cooler in the mornings. The first clouds appear on the western horizon, tentative, as if they are not sure whether they are welcome after so long an absence. And somewhere between the hill and Jerusalem, a story is traveling. It starts with the merchants who passed and looked away but could not forget. It passes to the travelers who stopped and stared and carried the image with them to the next town. It moves through the marketplaces and the wells and the evening conversations where women gather and men lower their voices. A woman on a hill. She has been there for months. She has not moved. She guards the dead. She fights off the birds by day and the jackals by night. She is alone. She will not leave. The story grows, and stories like this have a destination, even when no one is steering them. They find the people who need to be disturbed, and eventually, inevitably, the story reaches the palace in Jerusalem. Someone tells David, "We do not know who. We do not know the exact words, but we know what the report contains, because the text tells us that David heard what Rizpah had done, not what Rizpah had said, what she had done. There were no speeches, no petitions, no letters to the court. There was a woman and a rock and a piece of sackcloth and a refusal that lasted half a year. And that was enough to reach the ears of a king. And something happens inside David when he hears it. The text does not describe the moment in detail, but what follows tells us everything. Something breaks open. Something that should have broken months ago when he signed the order, when he handed over 7 men whose only crime was their bloodline, when he made a political calculation and called it justice and moved on to the next problem. David is not a monster. That is what makes this so complicated. He is a poet, a worshiper, a man who once danced before the ark with such abandon that his wife despised him for it. He is capable of extraordinary tenderness and extraordinary blindness, sometimes in the same week. And now, hearing about a concubine who has done what he should have done, who has honored the dead that he discarded, something cracks in the polished surface of his kingship, and what leaks through is shame. Not the shame that leads to excuses, the shame that leads to action. David is about to move, and what he does next will answer Rizpah's vigil, heal a wound that has been open in Israel for decades, and prove that one woman's silent, stubborn, agonizing act of love was never, not for a single day, wasted. The king's orders go out before nightfall. David does not send a single messenger. He sends a delegation. Soldiers, officials, men with carts and linen wrappings, and the tools required for the proper handling of the dead. And their instructions are not vague. They are specific, detailed, and they go far beyond what anyone expected. First, the hill, so the 7 bodies are to be taken down from the stakes, washed, wrapped, and prepared for burial with the full rights and dignity afforded to the house of a king. Every one of them, not just Rizpah's sons, all 7. The men who were treated as political currency will be treated as human beings. The bodies that were left for the vultures will be given to the earth the way God intended, with care, with ceremony, with the weight of acknowledgement that these were not numbers on a ledger. They were men. They had names, and they deserved to be buried. But David does not stop there. And this is where the story breaks open into something larger than Rizpah's hill, larger than the Gibeonite treaty, larger even than the famine. He sends another group of men north, to Jabesh-Gilead, a town across the Jordan, only a town that most of Israel has not thought about in years. But David remembers what happened there. When Saul and Jonathan fell on Mount Gilboa, when the Philistines stripped the bodies and fastened them to the walls of Beth-shan as trophies, it was the men of Jabesh-Gilead who marched through the night, who risked their lives to climb those walls and take the bodies down, who carried them home and buried them under a tamarisk tree. It was a brave and tender act, and it was incomplete. The bones have remained there ever since, in a town far from Saul's ancestral home, far from the tomb of Kish his father, far from the place where a king's remains belong. David has known this. He has known it for years, and he has done nothing about it. Until now. The men ride to Jabesh-Gilead and retrieve the bones of Saul and Jonathan. They carry them south, carefully, reverently, wrapped in new linen, held the way you hold something that has waited too long for its proper resting place. And when they arrive, David orders the bones buried in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, in the land of Benjamin, in Zelah. The king who fell in disgrace on a mountaintop, whose body was mutilated by his enemies, and rescued by strangers, and left in a borrowed grave for decades, is finally brought home. And his son Jonathan, David's beloved friend, the man whose covenant David swore to honor, is laid beside him. 2 Samuel chapter 21, verses 13 and 14. David brought the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from there, and the bones of those who had been killed and exposed were gathered up. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the tomb of his father Kish, at Zelah in Benjamin, and did everything the king commanded. After that, God answered prayer on behalf of the land. Sit with that for a moment. After that, God answered prayer on behalf of the land. Not after the execution. Not after the 7 men were killed and their blood soaked into the rocky soil of that hill. The death was the Gibeonites' demand. It satisfied their grievance. But it did not satisfy God. What satisfied God was the burial. What broke the famine was not the taking of life, but the restoration of dignity. The rain did not fall because 7 men died. The rain fell because those 7 men, and a king and his son, who had waited decades in a borrowed grave, were finally treated with the honor that the dead are owed. Rizpah did not know this would happen. She could not have known. She did not sit on that rock for 5 months because she had calculated that her vigil would trigger a chain of royal decisions. She sat there because her sons were her sons, and she could not leave them. That is all. That is the whole reason. Love, not strategy. Instinct, not theology. The fierce, irrational, unquenchable refusal of a mother to accept that her children's bodies were garbage. And yet, that love, that stubborn, lonely, costly love, accomplished what no prophet demanded, what no priest prescribed, what no advisor in David's court suggested. It accomplished the proper burial of Saul and Jonathan. It accomplished the end of a 3-year famine. It accomplished the healing of a wound between Israel and its own past that had been open and bleeding since the day the news arrived from Gilboa. One woman on a hill with a piece of sackcloth did what the entire machinery of the kingdom could not do. She reminded them what mattered. The people of Gibeah watch the burial procession. The neighbor who told Rizpah to accept it quietly and move on watches from her doorway as the carts pass, carrying wrapped bodies toward proper graves. She does not speak. There is nothing to say. The court official who called it justice watches from the edge of the road and adjusts his understanding of the word. The merchants who glanced at the hill and looked away now stand still as the procession passes, and some of them bow their heads. Tunu and the ones who filed Rizpah's vigil under madness quietly open the drawer and refile it under something they do not have a word for. Courage, holiness, love that refuses to be practical. Rizpah watches too. She watches from the hill where she has sat for so many months that the shape of the rock has become the shape of her body. She watches as they take her sons down. She watches as they wrap Armoni's body in clean linen, as they do the same for Mephibosheth. She watches as the careful hands of David's men do what David's orders should have ensured from the beginning. And something in her chest, something that has been clenched like a fist since the morning they knocked on her door, begins, slowly, to open. Not to forgive. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. Not in the way that word is usually meant. But to release. To breathe. To let the sackcloth fall from her shoulders and feel the air on her skin for the first time in months, without the immediate reflex of vigilance. The birds are someone else's concern now. The jackals will not come tonight. Her sons will sleep in the ground, the way the dead are supposed to sleep, covered, held, given back to the God who made them. She is one, not the words she would use, not a word that fits anything about this story, but the thing she fought for, the single, irreducible thing, has been granted. Dignity. Not life. She could not get that back. But dignity. The right to be mourned properly. The right to be buried. The right to matter even after the powerful have decided you do not. And this story echoes forward through the centuries in ways that Rizpah could never see from her hill. Because the pattern she set, on the template of a woman who stays with the dead when the world walks away, appears again. At the foot of a cross, centuries later, when another group of people deemed expendable by another political calculation is reduced to one body on a hill, it will be the women who stay. Mary, his mother. Mary Magdalene, the others. When the disciples scatter and the crowd disperses, and the soldiers finish their work and move on, it is the women who remain, who watch, who do not leave. And when Joseph of Arimathea goes to Pilate and asks for the body, when he wraps it in clean linen and places it in a tomb and rolls a stone over the entrance, he is doing what David did after Rizpah's vigil. He is answering a love that refused to let the dead be discarded. He is restoring the dignity that power tried to strip away. Rizpah did not know she was setting a pattern. She did not know she was teaching the future how to grieve with defiance and dignity. She knew only her sons and her sackcloth and the long, dark nights on a hill where the wind never stopped and the stars were so bright they looked like wounds in the sky. And now, one final thing. For you. Maybe you are not on a hill. Maybe your vigil is a living room, a phone screen, a prayer you have prayed so many times, the words have lost their edges and become smooth, like river stones, worn down by repetition but still held, still offered, still placed before a God who has not yet answered. Maybe you are fighting for the dignity of someone the world has written off. A child who has wandered, a parent who does not remember your name, a marriage that everyone says is over, a calling that no one else sees. Maybe you are tired in a way that sleep does not fix. Maybe you have been told, gently and firmly and repeatedly, to move on, to be practical, to accept what cannot be changed, and something in you simply will not do it. You are not crazy. You are not wasting your time. You are Rizpah on the hill, and the God who kept count of her tossings is keeping count of yours. The God who collected her tears in a bottle has a bottle with your name on it. And the rain is coming. You may not see it yet. The sky may still be wide and empty and hard as iron. But the clouds are forming on the other side of the horizon, and they are moving, slowly, steadily, toward your hill. Isaiah chapter 49, verses 15 and 16. For can a mother forget the baby at her breast and have no compassion on the child she has borne? Though she may forget, I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands. Let those words settle. God does not forget. When every system and every institution and every authority has moved on, when the file is closed and the decision is final, and the world has turned its attention to the next crisis, God does not forget. He engraves. Not in sand, not in parchment that can burn, in the palms of his hands, in the place where the nails would go centuries later, when he himself would hang on a hill and be treated as expendable and be buried by the people who refuse to walk away. Your vigil is engraved. Your staying is engraved. Your name is engraved. And no vulture, no jackal, no darkness, no system, so no verdict, no silence will erase it. And now, a prayer, not for the crowd, for you. Father, we come to you from the hill. Some of us have been here for a long time. Some of us just arrived. Some of us are fighting off birds we cannot name, things that come for the people and the callings and the promises we are trying to protect. And our arms are tired, and our voices are raw, and the sackcloth has worn through to our skin. Lord, we bring you the Rizpahs, the mothers and the fathers and the sisters and the friends who have refused to walk away, the ones who guard what the world has given up on, the ones who sit through the long night because love will not let them leave. We ask you to see their hills, every hill, the hospital room hill, the empty bedroom hill, the repeated prayer hill, the silent phone hill, the I don't know how much longer I can do this hill. Send the rain, Lord. Send the David. Send the moment when the dignities are restored, and the bones are brought home, and the famine finally breaks. But until the rain comes, give them one more night of strength, one more day of endurance, one more hour of the love that outlasts everything. In the name of the God who counts our tossings and bottles our tears and engraves our names where they can never be erased. Amen. She could not give them life, so she gave them dignity, and that was enough to move a king, break a famine, and remind an entire nation what love looks like when it has nothing left but itself. Share this with someone who is holding a vigil tonight. They need to know that someone sees them